En avril 1996, la chaîne américaine Fox met à l'antenne en plein milieu de saison une série intitulée Profit. Son lancement s'accompagne de bandes-annonces particulièrement intrigantes.
Inescapable. The spider spins his web, weaving countless strands to form an almost invisible trap, perfectly designed to capture and devour his prey. Amateur.
Programmée le lundi soir juste après Melrose Place, la série est saluée par la critique, mais son audience peu élevée entraîne sa déprogrammation après 4 épisodes. En septembre 1997, la série sort de son placard et est diffusée en France, en y incluant les épisodes tournés mais restés inédits aux États-Unis. Les plans machiavéliques ourdis par Jim Profit, un jeune youpi froid et calculateur, fascinent les spectateurs. Le psychopathe dangereux qui dort dans le carton où il était séquestré étant enfant trouve enfin son public. Novembre 1999 à Los Angeles. Quelques 3 ans et 10 mois après le tournage du dernier épisode. Les 2 créateurs et producteurs de la série, John McNamara et David Greenwalt, retrouvent Adrian Pasdar, l'interprète du personnage de Jim Profit. Devant nos caméras, ils ont accepté de rassembler leurs souvenirs et de nous livrer leurs témoignages, nous offrant ainsi un éclairage inédit sur cette série hors du commun. Et d'abord leur réaction devant l'impact de la série en France.
Really, really exciting. Since about 18 people saw the show in America.
But they were all critics.
And they loved it. Critics loved the show. But it's very exciting for us to hear that the show is having some success somewhere in the world, because we think it's a damn good show.
I think we were all, I can't speak for these guys, but I mean, I was somewhat indifferent to whether it would ever be successful for a very specific reason. I just knew it was a really good show. And people would say to me, isn't it weird? Do you think it's going to be successful? And my answer was always the same. I don't care. I like it. It's a really good show. It's really different. It's really unusual that it's a hit in one country throughout the entire world. But hey, they have the best food.
Who are you?
This is Jim Profit, Chaz, new junior VP, taking over for Wayne.
First day?
Yes, sir. I was working as a cook in a restaurant in New York. And you think I'm kidding? He'll tell you the truth. He came to New York. We met in New York. I'd done a number of films and hadn't done any television, and was reluctant to get into doing television.
In fact, he didn't own a television.
Didn't own a television.
We gave him, that was when he agreed to do the show, we gave him a gift. We gave him a little television.
Little television set, a little portable. I was working as a cook not just a cook. I was running a restaurant, actually, in Greenwich Village in New York. And the script came along, and I really thought it was something that, I remember reading it early on, and thinking it was just great, and seeing the visual imagery juxtaposed with the text really was powerful. And I thought that would be an interesting way to re-enter into the marketplace. You know, I had taken myself off the market for a while.
I remember Richard III with Olivier, honestly, being on television, and we were both not working as much as we should and watching television in our 2 homes and talking on the phone a lot, David and I. And I remember thinking, you know, I think it was on both our TVs, we were, you know, watching. Somehow that's in my memory. It was a long time, it was 92 or 91. And I'm thinking, like, this would be interesting. I mean, TV, one of the things that happens when you're sort of breaking into any new medium is you have a rebellious attitude. And you say, well, they're a bunch of idiots, or they're just playing it safe. If I did this, I could do so much better, you know. And I think our attitude was, why couldn't a bad guy, not like J.R. Ewing, who's sort of a scoundrel, but a sociopath, be the star of a television show?
I think we read somewhere about someone who had been raised in some container, and we started thinking of what if someone had grown up in a box, and what if a guy who had absolutely no fear of anything except television, because television in effect had been his mother. You know, he was raised in a box looking out this window, and he'd had thousands and thousands of hours of his only contact with humanity was through that little glass, you know, those people in that glass.
It just evolved into a corporation seemed like a much more natural environment for him, because it's a place of absolute pure greed where good and bad really don't apply. It's profit and loss. And out of that obviously came the name of the character.
Also, there's a little homage to Wise Guy, which was a terrific, groundbreaking show. It was one of the, was about the 80s, I guess, mid-80s in
There's
American
a bad guy
television.
played by Kevin Spacey.
Wonderful bad guy named Mel Prophet. So there was Profit and Loss, Profit is a business thing, little homage to Wise Guy. It was a complete labor of love. We never expected the story, the script to sell. We never expected it to get picked up, and we certainly never expected it to get made and shown on American television.
It was written 3 years before it was made. The pilot was written in '93, I think. We were pitching it with Kim LeMasters and Stephen J. Cannell, who are our partners on the project. And we went into a network that shall remain nameless, and we were 2 beats into the pitch. We got to the part where he kisses his stepmother on the mouth and says, "Hi, Mom." And the executive, who shall remain nameless, I wish I could name him, he said, "Let me stop you guys. So this is all fake, right? This isn't really going to happen." And no, that's really his stepmother. And he goes, "Okay, you guys can leave now." And he kicked us out
of his office.
That is a true
Absolutely
story.
true story.
And we went, I remember being in the parking lot of this network and saying to David, "I know we have something here. If it pissed off a network executive enough to kick us out, we've got something great."
Hi, Mom.
What Adrian did playing Jim Prophet that we were just talking about, that you could look at a certain scene that popped into my head, is the moment at the end of Act 1 of the pilot, the first episode, where he walks in his office and a beautiful redheaded woman kisses him and he says, "Hi, Mom." Now, I can think of a lot of very fine actors who would want to raise their eyebrow or smirk or give it a little thing because they think, "Oh, I've got to make the audience know, that they're in on the joke too." Adrian just, if you watch that scene, he just says it. And he says it after an incredibly passionate kiss. And so the juxtaposition is, oh, a hot babe, oh, and by the way, that's the moment when most of the audience, who are Nielsen audiences, which is how they measure an audience in America, most of them turn the television show off at that point. I think in a sense we really succeeded deeply, in a way that I believe the French can really appreciate.
We offended everyone.
We offended everybody, instantaneously.
Do I know you? Hi, Dad.
The trick in the character was written into it. Playing it, just not playing it. Not just reading not playing it, not playing intention I mean, it's simple things about acting, but not playing bad. You don't have to play bad if you're doing bad. You just, "Hello, I'm going to kill you." It's very easy to play that, but "Hello, I'm going to kill you." I mean, it was written so well that it wasn't a big chore to find how to play it. The trick was not to ham it up.
One of the things I loved about the way Adrian played the character was he wore the garment of the character very loosely. He was just a jolly psychopath. He was just happy to be there.
Yeah.
There was no what we call mustache twirling, and it was a character who never needed credit for what he had done. And it's a fascinating character. You don't see that in life.
Which was his power. That was the power of Prophet is a guy who understands that the more he does and the less light is on him, the more omnipotent he can become. I mean, there was a quote in the beginning of the script that I don't know where we got it from, Samuel Johnson, but it said, "To be omnipotent and friendless is to reign." And that is essentially, he never really wanted to be close to people, but he wanted to know a lot of people.
Psychiatrists who sleep with their patients. Like you and Celia Harden. Right here on this couch, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6. Is that right? Gee, nothing to say.
When Adrian came in the room, I'll never forget it, I just got this thing went up my back. It was just like this electric.
Oh, come on, say it went up his butt.
Well, it's true. It is true. It's
Back.
good.
It's
But
TV, it's French
also-
TV. You can say it exactly.
Somewhere back
Adrian and I
there.
are now married. No, but it was really weird because he wouldn't read, which is good.
No, you
He's good,
can't.
right, you can't.
Don't read
Yeah, right.
if you really want it and you know what you're doing as an actor. Don't unless
He's right though, because there was something about the complexity of that character too, to capture that in a reading. But he came in and he understood it, which is also really rare. That he had read the text, he had absolute kind of an inside eerie knowledge, not only of what was on the page, but where David and I wanted to go with the show.
In all those years, I have never, ever come across a thing like you. Where in hell did you come from?
And wouldn't it be interesting to do a story about a guy who isn't exactly pure evil, but where the bad guy is the hero, where he will do anything to achieve his goals, but he is not, there's nothing excessive about him. You know, he's an environmentalist in the truest sense of the word. You know, he won't make you his enemy unless he absolutely has to. He wants you to be his friend. He wants to achieve
And we
his
came up with
goals.
something really interesting, I remember, which is that very often good things would result, like a corporation can do a good thing in pursuit of a dollar. That would often happen with him.
Yes, it didn't bother him if he committed good, if you will, you know. And it certainly didn't bother him if he committed evil.
He was really
He
indifferent.
was just a very pure force of nature.
One of the reasons a polygraph remains inadmissible in court is because what it measures isn't whether or not the truth is being told, but how the body is behaving during a series of questions and answers. If you upset the body, then you throw off the test.
A lot of the voiceover was we had so much plot, but we also wanted the audience to be his partner.
We wanted Jim Profit to take you by the hand and say, come on now, I'm going to tell you a story. You know, I'm here with you to tell you the story. And I happen to be a psychopath who lives in a box who will do anything to anybody.
But I'm really good looking, and you're going to see my.
But
butt.
I'm not unfriendly, you know.
Right.
So so the beginning and end of every show, you know, he would turn, he'd look into camera, he'd say the first line of dialogue, and we would record it as voiceover, even though it was coming out of his mouth, and then you'd go into the story.
Family. It's everything.
And it was a way to try to partner the audience with what is essentially an abhorrent character, and try to get you to come along.
But it also, there were moments that were when it was hugely helpful, when a scene wasn't quite. 9 times out of 10, it was pre-scripted. But I'm thinking of the one particular line. You called me in Santa Barbara, you know, and it was a scene, a juxtaposition just wasn't working. And it's the line that everybody talks about. And we wrote it on the phone, and it was, the line is, when he's trying to seduce Nora, the wife, when you want someone to love you,
Open your heart. When you want someone obsessed with you,
Close it.
close it.
Now that's an example. We wrote that like in desperation. Dave was on a looping stage, but that desperation, I think, also created something that is the heart of that character. He understands how to manipulate people who have a heart because he doesn't have one.
Oh, God. I'm so sorry. I didn't see you. Are you all right?
I'll be just fine.
It's not that he was unforgiving. He was beyond forgiveness or revenge. In fact, there's a wonderful line in Chinese Box where Gail says to him, the secretary who's gotten revenge on this bad guy, and she says to him, you know, I thought revenge would feel good, and he goes, revenge is a tool of the weak.
Revenge is pointless. It's a tool for the weak. And you're not weak.
One down.
One to go.
At one point, we had toyed with the idea, you know, was Chaz Grayson, who was the CEO of all of this big Grayson, is he actually in some way Prophet's father? Like, was he literally, or is he figuratively, or is he the father that Prophet wished he had had, all of that? In one sense, it's just a cool symbolic shot that the box he grew up in was a moving box of Grayson and Grayson. The other image that struck with me, he grew up basically on a farm. And in Grayson was like the Sears catalog. Like everything was sent to them. They never went anywhere to get it. Everything came to him. And the only things he had was this box and his television. And the idea that that kid would someday run that company.
You want all of us to tear each other apart because that's your twisted idea of family. When you get Chaz, do you see your own father? Do you see how deeply you need to please him, how badly you need to gain control over him?
You'd like to teach me how you develop such a clear mind.
Oh, I spent years living in a box.
There's nothing quite like a caring mother.
Well, sex is always weird and problematic. But of course, in the world of Jim Prophet, sex is a means to power. Sex is a means to power and control.
Which is funny because I think in a lot of the world, it's the reverse in a lot of men's lives. Power is the means to getting sex and so forth. And this is, we take, you know, the other angle.
Jim Prophet's in the business of meeting people at their most basic needs, you know, whatever they may be, and of understanding what people are ashamed of, and then seeing if he can use that.
And coming to them and saying, I know this about you, but you can't be ashamed of this.
Jim's very accepting.
Yeah,
He's
look,
very accepting.
Everybody does it. You just won't get exposed if you
It's one thing. How could you not want to do this one thing for me, you know?
Yeah.
And that's really, because I think in America especially, there is a tremendous puritanical shame attached to sexuality. And Prophet is really is indifferent to sex.
Yes, he's not promoting it, he's not hiding it.
However, he is completely willing to exploit a shame that he understands other people have that he himself does not. So.
Put it this way. Getting them would be a crime.
What we've been talking about, the ability to make something different on television that doesn't play by standard rules that have been accepted by broadcasters and viewers over the course of, generations. It seemed to break molds in a way that hadn't been done previously, and obviously wasn't ready to happen in America yet. It's ironic. It's one of those things that when I look at the show now, it was a dart that hit the board perfectly at zero. It was a perfect shot, and it worked at the time. I don't know that it would work as well now. It worked at the time so well that it was almost invisible, and it was so perfect, it was seamless, and it was bound to just like a wrinkle-free garment. It just kind of it went unnoticed by a large portion of, I think, of America, because it was such a perfect comment on the time that it was about. Now it's true with anything. It's I think either whether it's a song that defines a generation or a time, anything that's true, it hits it so perfectly that you can't imagine it having happened at any other time. And that show now, I don't know whether it would work as well.
I'd disagree with you. I'd have, just to make a vigorous debate interesting for French television, yeah. I would say that there's something about it that the way we did it then and the stories we chose to tell in those 8 episodes were very specific to Carl Icahn and junk bonds and the greed of the 80s, but that you could take that character today and put him into any situation.
Yeah,
the character, I think, is because, and I'm not taking credit for that, I think Shakespeare perfected the idea of take a psychopathic character and put him into any milieu where his pathology can grow. If Jim Prophet had stayed with Grayson Grayson, it would have become a completely vertically integrated and horizontally integrated company. And he, I think, would be, in 1999 or 2000, more successful and more dangerous and more politically connected than ever before.
We were going to expand the show into
absolutely.
politics. We were going to run one of the Grayson brothers for Senate, and we were going to...
He was always going to be the guy behind the guy.
Right.
People say to me, is it upsetting to you that the show, you only did 8 episodes? I said, we did 8 almost perfect episodes. I would say there's maybe half an episode that's not that great. I won't tell you which one it is. But out of 8 episodes, out of 9 hours of TV, 8.5 hours are just really, really, really good television. And I don't feel that way about all my work. I think most of my work is crap. I think most of your work is crap. But David wrote an amazing moment at the end of I don't want to give it away if the audience hasn't seen it, but watch the final voiceover of the final episode, because it's almost as if David had a sense that this might be the last episode. We didn't know.
We thought it might be.
It might be. And he just, in one line, you've never, yeah, Fortitude. It's just perfect.
When the smoke clears and you get right down to it, only 3 things really matter. Your faith, your fortitude, and your family.
Et spécialement écrit par les producteurs, voici les détails des scénarios qui devaient suivre le 8e épisode. Joan Meltzer, la responsable de la sécurité, retrouvait bel et bien la trace du vrai Jim Prophet en Irlande. Il s'agit d'un jeune garçon que Jimmy Stokowski, notre Jim Prophet, a rencontré puis noyé lors d'une sortie en mer et dont il a usurpé l'identité. Le vrai Jim Prophet n'est cependant pas mort noyé. Joan le retrouve dans le coma au début de ce qui aurait dû être la 2e saison. Mais au moment où elle s'apprête à téléphoner cette information vitale, la cabine explose. Une bombe a été posée là par un agent de l'IRA, sous les ordres de Jim Prophet. Jim, par la suite, retrouvait son alter ego et lui réglait définitivement son compte. Dans un épisode déjà écrit par David Greenwald, Prophet fait croire à Chas Gwesen qu'il est trahi puis menacé de mort par son propre père. Un autre épisode devait lancer Jim Prophet sur l'arène politique. Il détruit la carrière d'un sénateur qui s'oppose à lui et exhorte Pete Gwesen à se présenter à sa place.
Anyone who thinks controlling people is a science is dead wrong. It's an art.
It was a really smartly constructed well-executed thriller that satisfied on that very basic level. We always said, it's not a question of what's going to happen. It's a question of how is it going to happen. Prophet chose to say to the audience, you have a brain, you have weaknesses, you have ambitions. This is a show about your weaknesses, your ambitions, the things you want, and what would happen if somebody came to you and said, I can give you anything. What would you do? That's why it was so important that the audience was, in a sense, the silent partner through the narration. And that's what it was for me.
I just think it was an adult comic book. You know, with the tongue-in-cheek and it was an adult comic book. I mean, it really had a lot of comments to say on, I think, the situation of American television, American culture, American business, and American ideology when it comes to power and sex and what people will do to achieve either one or both. I think it certainly had a lot to say. Again, I said it before, Prophet wasn't a guy without morals. He had a very high list of morals. They were just somewhat different from yours.
Après Profit, David Greenwalt fut producteur exécutif sur X-Files, puis sur Buffy, tueuse de vampires, et il préside maintenant Destinée d'Angel, la série dérivée de Buffy. John McNamara a créé Ultime Recours et travaille actuellement sur une nouvelle version télé du Fugitif. Adrian Pasdar a joué dans L'Antre de Frankenstein, dans des séries comme Feds et dans de nombreux téléfilms. Après l'arrêt prématuré de la série, des démarches furent faites pour intéresser la chaîne américaine Showtime à en reprendre la production. En vain. Les 8 épisodes de cette série fascinante, provocante et raffinée resteront uniques.